All right, work's over, punched out. I'm gonna try and just jump right back in where I left off last break. So we're just talking about the church, the difficulties people may encounter or experience if they try to join a church or be a part of the church or interact with people who are at least saying that they are on a path towards increasing coherence in whatever language they would use. So there's the obvious challenges there. So I find that this is a very seems like a very fertile ground to just keep talking and discussing about the church, about what it is, how any kind of effort, like what we're doing with the Portal Mountain and the proximity guilds there, any of these kinds of efforts where you gather people together to attempt to help each other, to strengthen each other, to disciple and to gain insights into life. You're always going to have these challenges. So the church, as I'm describing it, I'm just kind of giving some typical challenges that will always be there, as the mere fact of entropy, as well as the fact of people being born and being raised into this society, into culture, and going through their lives and initially learning and taking in instructions in school and from their parents and obeying, going through their life and trying to figure things out and see if the paths that have been laid out for them by others are actually beneficial, or in many cases frustrating and causing us to feel like we're being used and abused by society. This kind of stuff could happen, especially with the schism in play, the great schism between mind and body, and therefore allowing the unmooring of the breakaway civilization. This way causing this way for our interactions with the state to feel very alienated, as if we are mere subjects and not in any way participant. There's no feedback loop. There's no as above, so below. There's simply as above, what's above, you better do it. And that's not a proper natural dynamic. It's not the kind of dynamic that we see in nature. And so we have people growing up, going through the system, and it never and this is the problem. This is what we're going to see. This is the template here. It never goes beyond that participant degree of coherence. So there's and I mean, within certain facets and certain specialties, and of course we're going to sort of experience this, and in certain professions we need to have that dynamic, that expectation of no expectations, that things are always changing. But of course the core of our being and the core of our identity is still stuck in this participation type of mode, which is alienating the core of our being against ourselves. Our mind is dominating us and making the body do what it doesn't want to do, and furthermore not listening to the body and what the body says and how it feels, not listening to our context, learning how to shut ourselves up. All these kinds of things are resultant of this society that never manage to integrate anything beyond participant. And we would see, if we look at the way that systems of power and control work in contemporary society, this membership, the membership actually has to be actively, there has to be, how to say it, there have to be protections put in place in the education system, and in the way that we learn, that we grow up. There are protections in place with which solidify the ego, and in the form of this identity, which is not ever supposed to escape. So this kind of like a spiritual journey in modern society is actually a process of becoming a damaged commodity. So we are built up all of our lives to be to build up our self-esteem and our self-confidence, and that we can do anything and all this kind of stuff. But meanwhile, via our identity and our very rigid sense of reality, of what's real, our crusty APS, this stuff is all utilized, analyzed and utilized in what we call computational propaganda. That you and those around you can be summed up into categories, and various solutions can be calculated as to how to move a certain majority or certain masses of people into certain actions via broadcast media. So media which at the push of a button reaches millions of people all at once. This is a broadcast, and the content of these broadcasts are always motivated by the types of things that would have such a system in the first place. This one-way broadcast, these controlling type signals. It's a concentration of power, immense concentrations of power, and the only thing that keeps it such is our the limitations of our self-awareness, that we become mere reactive beings, that what we think is real is actually a shared reality which is manipulated en masse and used as levers and hooks to alter and adjust our behavior. And the crazy part of that is, once the being has kind of reached adulthood and started crusting up, there's we can be set free in a sense that we don't need to be imprisoned and physically imprisoned or anything like that. We can be free to explore and look around and get the most out of life and everything we want to do, and all the things that we want, all these ideas we think that they are our ideas, and there's virtually no escape. If everything is going well and going smoothly, there will be practically no reason for anybody to ever encounter anything which would make them question anything beyond this system. It's simply too comfortable. There's no pain happening. But meanwhile, and as I've stated in previous essays, this pain is exported. So us speaking for I guess myself and those who have jobs and who have a house to go home to and food to put on the table, we are rare. That security that we have is rare, and the power that we give to the GovCorp apparatuses to keep this going. We don't know, and we don't care what has to be done in our name, whether it be wars, which again, computational propaganda, whatever it is, the enemy, we just have to know that the enemy is our enemy and that we must defeat the enemy. And this comes in via broadcast, and there you go, now we're destroying another country, and again exporting this misery upon the world, and yet being comfortable and able to be completely ignorant of that, and able to just to remain unquestioning and comfortable. However, and I'm not sure if I've brought this up, probably, I think maybe I did, but I'll just go over again. No matter how comfortable we are, there's always life circumstances. Even I will give the least obvious one first, but that's inspiration. So even though you're comfortable and everything seems fine, you can become inspired in your own life by witnessing the behavior or expressions of others, which feel to you as a call to life, a call to justice, a call to your fellow humanity, a call of solidarity. And these kinds of things can inspire somebody, especially a real life example of somebody who's living this out in your proximity. This can actually change your mind, that you will maybe start questioning, maybe there is something more that I can be doing, rather than this day in, day out comfort and going on vacations and doing all the things that I like, and everything in the world is just peachy. Maybe there's something more. The other two scenarios that I'm currently aware of are one is an acute trauma. So something happens in your life that makes you question, what is the purpose of everything you're doing? And this happens. It's a matter of time. So a relative dies, somebody you love dies, you sustain a life-altering injury, you become disabled in some way, or you almost die, near-death experiences. There's so many different things which can cause somebody to question their current running program. And in fact, as we get older, I believe these instances and these cases, we have much more time to eventually, there's more time that we could have encountered these traumas or thought about them. When we get older, I think that we kind of get pushed towards this spiritual growth, pushed towards wisdom. It doesn't always happen, but it's just that the life experience, there's more of it. There's a higher kind of chance. And I mean also when getting older, like elderly or whatever, we are forced to contemplate death. We don't know how many days we have left, and of course nobody ever does. Any of us could die at any moment. But to bring this up to active, conscious thought, as people get older, they can still be fighting. They can be prideful. They can be angry with their family and just holding grudges and just spreading bad energies until they realize that they're old and that they got they've got problems and their body is really showing the end. And it's like, how can you still be living in this world and be miserable? Why would you want to? Why would you want to do that? And people live miserable all their lives, and they don't realize what a waste of their potential it is. And perhaps on your deathbed, this is where, by a factor of enantiodromia, which is the arising of the opposite, when we realize that our body is at its absolute limit, we are taking our last breath. In this moment, we see how what it really means to be to have a limited potential. And if only we see this vision that if only we could walk, if only we could get up and take another breath and walk and see the sunset, or all these romantic ideas. If only we could do that. If only we just had a body. If only we had a body, life would have so much potential, because you're staring death in the face and your body is broken and there's nothing left of your body and you are at the end and you are at death. And so imagine what it would be like to have a body, to have life, to have anything, food on your plate. How great is that it's going to sustain you and give you energy to go and do something, anything you want. And so looking back on life through this perspective, may be shocking as hell to some people. Death may be shocking as hell, for this reason, because of how we've wasted our life. That, at least that's one reason. Just to come to the end of it and realize that we wasted so much time being petty and small and being nasty to people and being nasty to ourselves and just being in a depressive funk and not knowing how to get out of it. And things are not our fault, but there is more to life than that. I don't know if I've mentioned it yet, but I'll just mention that I think a lot of depression is that feeling like you can't do anything, and wait till you're on your deathbed, literally moments from death, and then how really you can't do anything. And so that's just kind of a thought. It's actually meant to be inspirational, because look at you, look at your potential. You have this body, this mind that you've been blessed with and granted. You have the ability to change anything you want. You have that ability. You can try. You have the ability to at least embark, to start, and take any bit of your life that's unsatisfactory, and you can start working towards making it better. And you have this power over every facet of your life. But stuck in a depression, in these mind games. So this is the ultimate alienation. Your mind is telling your body that nothing is possible, and you're sitting there. That I believe is a major basis of depression, is when the APS gets so crusted and so in its ways that the raw potentiality of any moment is completely overshadowed by a sense of reality in which nothing is possible, in which very little is possible. And this is due to the crusting, the calcification of the APS, that it has lost its dynamic, it lost its flow. And so these kind of questions are what spiritual pursuit is all about. There was one more, I guess I'm going to call them like gateways to participation, so to speak, to actively trying and experimenting and taking models and testing them, even though you don't know what it is. This is the participation factor of any and every facet of behavior. You always take a model on faith and then you test it out. So the spark for testing out this model of looking into your own life, looking into your being, looking into your body. Who are you? Finding out who you are. What is the meaning of life? What is your purpose? What can be your purpose? This pursuit here can be triggered by. So I mentioned I guess 3 gateways or whatever. So inspiration being one, acute trauma being another, and then chronic trauma being the third. So this is putting up with something or some number of things in your life for so long. Let's just take a classic example, one that I gave earlier. Why not? It fits pretty much. So somebody overworking themselves out of the house for like 16 hours a day or whatever, barely enough time to get home and get 5-6 hours of sleep maybe, and then doing it all over again. So anyways, this person I believe was working 10 or 12-hour shifts, but after so long they couldn't take it anymore. And the interesting part about this case is their body, the body itself, told this person by physically being unable to move outside of the house. So it just like totally primal messaging from the body finally came through after all of these other messages of being tired and being cranky and feeling depressed and just all this stuff. The mind and its processes, its identity processes, its myths, the myths it believes and how it works, that all kept trucking along, because of course we have these things and we can immediately justify it to ourselves. Well, I would rather have money so that I can eat and afford this house which my body doesn't want to leave. So right, like you can try and reason with your body like, hey, let's go. Otherwise, this place won't even exist for me. I will be forced out of it. I will be taken out if I don't want it. If you're going to sit in this room, you are going to be removed, and me, the brain, can't even stop what's going to happen because the force which will be applied. So of course we want to try and tell the body these things, and the world has our minds spun up in all these expectations of the reality of things, what's real and how it all works. But of course society, being unmoored as it is from the body, has no real mechanism for caring or from feeling the reflections or taking in reflections from the body, from the individual into the society. And we can hopefully it seems crazy or ridiculous to think that once every 4 years going to a booth and putting a check in a box, it should seem crazy to think that will satisfy the body as it cries out. So I've been trying to describe the church a little bit just from my experience, again, to give a sort of familiarity with what a church is or what the church does, just as a kind of starting point for anybody who has no experience with that whatsoever, with community towards this So, first, I want to just talk about the typical format of church, what it's been. I guess I don't want to go into the. Well, maybe I will end up going into the the kind of reasoning behind why is the church structured the way it is, and what I'm talking about specifically is the format of first off, once a week, so a single moment or period per week. Let's say a Sunday morning for 2 hours. So that's the first kind of tip off of I guess where I'm going with this. That there's a need here that has to apparently be filled, and checking off the box. This is another sense of checking off the box. What I mean by that is providing appearances in your life. So those signals which flow from your being, in your expression. In other words, friends know that you go to church every Sunday or whatever. You post on Facebook, look at me and my family going to church. So this is a signal, so to speak, a representation of what happens or what should be happening at church. Simply the mere fact that you've attended, that you're there, you're already doing anything that everyone ever asked of you, and that's fine, and you're great. So, but of course we know, as we've been discussing, the problem of participation, and that we think that we can simply do what we're told, do all of the things that we're told, check off all the boxes, and then be good with God, so to speak. But as I've been trying to express, it doesn't work that way. This is participation. This is being under command of an externalized state, and so this is what. So religion itself coming up into this playing field of externalized meaning. So this whole symbol set, which became complex enough in the externalization of our organs, has once established, just continued to suck it in and draw in all of the organs, and so we have these institutions. We have one of which is religion, and so being an externalized sort of state, a collection of externalized meaning which is above and beyond any individual, and whereby the individuals are simply executing the commands and orders without carefully paying attention to the context. There's simply bulldozing over reality with an instruction set. And so when we have people doing this to maintain and sustain this religious institutions, we get this alienation. So this is back to the original schism between the mind and the body. And here we have a whole institution has been externalized. The organs have been ripped out of our bodies, and this whole mass of how things work, and the doctrine material, the scripture, and all of it, it's all outside of the control and counterbalance of any body. So in other words, people can continue to be overrun and had their inner worlds just crushed and pushed around by this. An example comes to mind of the Catholic practice, and not to pick on any in particular, but practice of confession, so that every week confession must be made. And I encountered just really a number of frustrated people recounting basically the same things, where they didn't felt like they didn't felt like they sinned, of course, because they didn't understand sin, and so they had to make up lies of what they've done, even saying, "Father, forgive me, for this week I lied to my parents, and I did this, and I got angry at this time," even though if none of that happened. So you have this poor child being put through this grinding machine of these rituals, which are unmoored from the body. The body has no idea why it's even being pushed through that. It's just pure confusion. But it gets propagated anyways, due to so many reasons. And another interesting note comes to mind, that even how dysmorphic these religious systems are, they have been seeded. Most of them have been seeded with the types of material necessary that to give people a guidance and a context for this for kind of like spiritual awakening. And it does happen, and you've always had these people. I guess they've called them saints, basically, but it's much more common than what's ever been recognized as saints, for people to gain membership to the guild. In other words, membership in the kingdom of God, to enter the kingdom of God. People have entered the kingdom of God, and they're looking around at this religion, these religious institutions, and they're like, "You don't know what you're doing. How do you even expect any of this to bring anybody to God?" And it's like, you're looking at this system and what people are doing, and they're just unconsciously just doing behaviors and rituals over and over again without any kind of thought or insight, and without any kind of real discipleship framework. No acknowledgement that some of us are still firmly planted in the world, and some of us have been completely changed. Our whole identity is completely changed, and our behavior will never be the same again. And all this stuff that we're just driven to God, and we are shown through God's eyes. Everything we see, we are shown how God sees it. And the Spirit is just crying, because these institutions are lagging so far behind, and they're just stuck in participation. Everybody simply doing these behaviors over and over again, which never, or rarely, if ever, are effective at actually bringing people to God. So why would people want to be part of a church? That all of this, I guess it kind of paints a really kind of grim or bad picture. But so keep in mind, I'll come back to this, what I've said before, that the world and the church are not very different at all. Some of the things that you have in church are that at least you have this context where it's kind of like expected that people are coming closer to God, or are supposed to be discipling, or at least, like, everyone, depending on your religion, you heard of someone, you heard of the Son of God, you heard of Jesus, and you know what he's like, and when we are not like him, like, it should be, okay, why are you not uh, um, behaving like how Jesus might? Like, why are you acting out of hate or fear? You know, like these kind of things where it should be easier in a spiritual community to kind of point out hypocrisy. But the courage to do so, and coming back to shamanism, even that skill and ability to engage in dramas, to point out hypocrisy and let the fallout happen, and let everyone get all kinds of upset and twisted up, and just being there, being the calm inside in the storm, the eye of the hurricane, and just watching people flail about, and further exemplifying the ignorance and the selfish spirit that they have in this confused state. So for me, myself personally, I feel with the Spirit in me encouraged to do so, to point out hypocrisy and to help bring healing to the church. And it's so difficult. Even I know, like, if some of my church family were to listen to these recordings, or to read, hopefully if this turns into a book, there are many times where we would be lost, especially when getting into the meta narrative, where what I say would literally trigger an opposition and a categorization of myself. So I would be categorized according to the crusty APS as a certain type, that I am a certain type, and that type is an opposition. So the APS will set up a self-other dichotomy, that saying that, well, this guy said this, therefore he is not my tribe, and my tribe is the good side, I'm on the side of God, and this guy is talking dangerous blasphemies, all kinds of stuff like this. Basically, this reaction is exactly what I'm talking about, that the law says this and you broke the law, and so now you're the enemy. This type of insanely oversimplistic view and approach to reality is incredibly alienating. It hurts when it happens to you, and this is why people don't want to try and fix the church. They don't want to speak into the church. They don't want to speak up against hypocrisy, because further hypocrisy is bound to happen. And I'm simply not afraid of that. I'm not afraid in any little bit, in any little way. So there is still a lot of good in the church, just as there is a lot of good in the world. You will find various activities together that people do. Small groups are wonderful for support. Again, though, we have these problems of participation, of stagnant participation, I guess I should say, in that's what I mean in most cases where I'm referring to participation in a kind of bad way. I mean stagnant participation. So again, all applause and respect to those who are participating, who are actively seeking hard and following the guidance and instructions that are laid out. Just do not stop thirsting. If you seek, you will find. But again, so we have this stagnant participation, the participation based on spectacle, based on representation. So a participation based on appearance. So the the appearances, once the appearances have been set up and we've practiced appearing to be Christian for long enough, or appearing to be spiritual, then we can get into our comfort zone and never change ever again, right? And of course we get this is part of our identity. It's a part of who we are. This is how we feel, right? And so if somebody comes up and questions that, or brings up a drama, or points out a hypocrisy, it hits to the core of our being. Like, this hurts so bad for people, and they reject it outright. It hurts so bad, and the only thing that can make it quickly feel better is to dissociate from that, wherever that bad feeling came from. Find a way to justify yourself that you are actually a good person and a good Christian and good this or that. Yeah, so the there is a lot of work to be done in the church. There are there are, of course, benefits to simply immersing yourself in Scripture and talking to other people and just asking questions, especially if you're new. It's definitely not offensive to people when they know that you're new and you just don't know, and you're trying to find answers and ask what is the meaning behind certain things, of course. And when you do that, if you're talking to a participant, you're almost never going to get a satisfactory answer, because they will not have the ability to speak into the context of your life, because they do not understand the law beyond how to represent it. It's pure spectacle. But needless to say, every church has members. Every group, everywhere you look, there are members. But it's we are not very well organized together. We don't know how to acknowledge each other, and this is kind of one of the, I guess, chicken and egg problems. I'm sure it's that type, because how do we recognize each other without figuring out how to recognize each other, and then all knowing how to recognize each other and how to work together? So it's we're kind of looking at a sort of emergent type of behavior, an emergent culture. And so, all in all, I would highly recommend trying to join a spiritual community. I recommend being around other people, just getting used to how people are, and yes, it can be really tough, and when you have high expectations, it can be even worse. But I do recommend trying to form relationships and community, and in general, it's a good idea. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people have already been severely burned by the church, and if they haven't and they go to church, they're very likely to be severely burned and to never want to have anything to do with it again. This is a serious problem that the church needs to deal with, and in my opinion, it needs to do that by openly acknowledging and making it for sure known, and this is scriptural, that not everybody has been born of the Spirit. Not everybody is a member in the capital C church. It's simply not true. Not everybody can be relied on or depended upon for advice. The best that a participant can do for you is pass along the instructions that they've received. They can do no more than that. They can never do more than that until it's no longer them doing it, and it's the Spirit in them, and they have been reborn. This, by the way, is is a life-changing event, which obviously cannot be, it's like the thing that cannot be unseen. You cannot unsee it. Once God blesses you to see what he sees, there is no going back, and truly you become aware of your potential and your responsibility, and slowly over time it changes you. There is no way that you cannot be changed by the Spirit. So in this way, it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. It certainly is a spirit of freedom, and especially in comparison with identity as the source of being, which is a complete prison in comparison. So I'm going to try and come back to my my sort of objective for the last few sections of this dictation, which is to try and equip those people who I know of. So equip my relationships, the people that I know, that I've developed a relationship with, people in my sphere of influence, people who are cooperating with me. In this case, in the context of the church, of the Christian church, I just want to keep going through to fill out some of the experiences that I've had, and what kind of organizational structure that I have experienced, and that seem to need some work. That we need to do some work on these things. So the first thing that comes to mind is leadership, and this is just kind of like noticing structure in the church. The church, capital C church, in the sense of the church of heaven, the heavenly church. This is the church led by Christ, and this church is manifest on earth, certainly. It's manifest by His Holy Spirit, by His Spirit in those who have been blessed with salvation, and so that's a church to juxtapose against the earthly church. So there are property, there's real estate, there are church buildings with mortgages. The church has a mortgage, just as an example. So the church of the earth is really intertwined in the world, and I mean, if it does not get enough money, it's going to go bankrupt, and the government is going to take the church away. So here I'm giving an example of a church which is unknowingly bound to evil. And of course, good things can happen in this context. However, when we have a situation like this, it should be plainly obvious that a church that like us, like our own bodies in society, if we don't go to work to get money, nobody is going to give us food. We just won't get it. We won't get a shelter. We won't get hygiene products that we need. If we don't go to work and get money, that's it. So we have to figure out how to sell ourselves, how to commoditize our time into skill sets that are marketable. And so you have churches that are bound by money that cannot let go of that tithing that you have to, we all have to. We're not going to say it this way, that if you don't tithe, we go bankrupt. But so a lot of the the evil in the world, the bank ruling over the church, forces the church to compromise on its operations. The church now has to develop this cancerous growth in its body, which is like these behaviors that cause it to alienate its own congregation and just demanding money. Yeah, so the church ideally, obviously, should be well grounded, well rooted already, not needing the world. So that's kind of ideal, and of course, a healthy body in Christ will always lead towards freedom. So it's just how sick that we've become that it's not that easy. So speaking about the leadership, I just wanted to get one point in, I guess, really, is that, and I guess maybe it's related, but this idea of trying to grow a plant or trying to grow a tree or whatever, let's say you're growing a plant, you cannot force it by the will of your mind to grow. You cannot force a plant to bear fruit. You cannot, it's not scientifically whatever possible that you can just force a plant to have a fruit or to grow. The only thing that you can do is allow it what it needs, to give it what it needs over time, that space, the light, the water, the nutrients, and to allow it to grow. So a church is the same way. When we're talking about people and relationships and how that all works, these are things that grow over time. They cannot be instituted or dictated by any kind of centralized top-down authority. And so what I'm just getting at here is the danger of a leadership which tries to control the direction of the church way too much. Again, there is a place for cultivation and for seeing problems and trying to address those problems, to make sure that constraints are not breached, or to try to do so, and to allow the church to grow. But when we have leadership who may feel like it's their responsibility to protect the congregation, to that things should be done this way or a certain way or that way, what this does is puts a damper on the spirit. So so instead of allowing, so like, I'm just going to give examples, like if some members of the congregation want to start doing a new ministry or a new project or something, it really shouldn't be, and even the ones who are proposing to do this, it shouldn't be a matter of approval of whether the leadership says yes or no, but in the church of heaven, led by Christ, with the Spirit in us, with the Holy Spirit in us, we are authorized and empowered to connect directly to each other, to peer directly to each other without mediated authority. And this is the crux of it. And if we want to do something together, there is no authority that would or should stop that from happening. So, in other words, there's, I guess, a fault on the side of leadership sometimes, as well as membership, or whatever you want to say, the congregants of a church, to expect way too much out of the leadership, and to not simply be prepared to make things happen with others on your own, because how else does a church function? If we are going to approach this as a state, the state in its ways, which have advanced out of the technology developed by the church to deal with the disembodiment. The state is a modern example. We can't treat our church like a state. This is just a failure. If we are thinking that we can all pay our taxes, in other words, our tithes, or whatever you want to call them, and then just have the church pay for things that just need to be done. This is not how a community works, or how the church works. And if that's the limit of what's being done in the church, then it is dying and or dead. That's another, I guess, point that I maybe wanted to get into. Like, the church is an old institution, old religious institution. Again, the idea that it's been usurped by the state, and that the way that modern society operates and functions is the legacy of the church. So an irony there for atheists that don't realize that they are disconnected from their own body, and that the way that they interpret and navigate reality is an extremely limited set based on an exploitation which was allowed to propagate thousands of years ago. Due to the propagation, this externalization of meaning. This is the only way that this unmooring from the citizenry, or from the membership of the tribes, or however you want to say it, the unmooring of the body and the mind is what allowed the modern atheist to arise. Not realizing how many myths they believe in, like the myth of progress is just an easy, obvious one, that technology will keep progressing, and that therefore things will get better, and this is the glorious future that we are all marching towards, and therefore we should just support technology, and it's going to save us from everything. So this kind of myth and this kind of mythical thinking is really really powerless. Like ideology in general, it's nobody and nowhere. It's all abstract. There's no concrete. This is, again, an expression of that great schism between the mind and the body, instituted in religion. So again, coming back to that question, what can we do to make our church better? What can we do? Like, what the people like me, the people that I know, what can we do? First off is acknowledge each other. Like, use the coherence protocol and understand that, and gather together based on coherence. So this is one of the things that needs to be implemented in the small group infrastructure. Is this acknowledgement that there is certainly the kingdom of heaven, and some of us can see it and act within it, and others do not see it and are powerless to act within it. And so those of us who can see it, we absolutely need to be connecting together. We need to have special small groups for this, to work together, to tell stories together of the kinds of difficulties that we have to deal with, which is a unique set. Basically, dealing with the hypocrisy, and how do we keep our spirits up in the face of such hypocrisy, which is obviously rampant, and even just a necessary part of the church, a necessary factor of participation. So like coming together and being able to share healthy models for how to deal with and think about this kind of stuff, we absolutely need that. Next is throughout the church, we need to have an acknowledgement of this, an acknowledgement of discipleship, that we are discipling under Christ. Without this acknowledgement, and without these consistent reminders and hooks, especially I guess from the pulpit, as you would say, so like our broadcast messages that we're broadcasting to each other, or rather from leadership to the congregation, need to include these reminders that look, if you're not on a journey towards increased coherence, if you're not on a journey, if Christ is not in ever and ever increasing amounts of abundance in your life, if you're not seeing that the Spirit more and more, then you may be stuck, and you might not be doing what we're supposed to be doing here. So we need these kind of uncomfortable reality checks, and this comes to the problem that preachers or pastors encounter, which they usually submit to. They lie down and submit to it, which is evil. This problem that if you speak truth to people, they're gonna feel convicted. They're gonna feel offended. You are hitting something. You are cutting like a knife to the bone, and you're gonna lose people. So this is a great challenge to keep things real while not triggering people. And you know what? You're gonna trigger them. And some people are just there only to be seen, only to represent religion, not to embody it. And those people are going to leave as soon as things start getting real and uncomfortable, and as soon as people start actually talking to each other about discipling and about coming closer to Christ. Those conversations are going to become too much of a burden. They're going to be too uncomfortable. And it's going to reveal that a commitment was never really there to actually figure this life out and to find the meaning in life, and to in other words, come closer to God. That those people will be unfortunately shown to be that they're just not ready. Their status, you could say, will be revealed as not participating. And this is something that even a participant should be able to identify in another, is are people actually following instructions? Are they discipling? Are they coming closer to Christ? Are they talking to each other? Are they making small groups? Do they hang around and try to ask tough questions and challenge each other? Participants can identify in other participants, like an actual participant knows whether another one is participating or are they simply a guest. And again, we have to put shame aside, guilt aside, all that. It's not what it's about. But knowing that somebody is a guest, it's or not knowing, but rather when somebody continually disqualifies themselves from participation, we have to change our approach, because they no longer are responding, or it's apparent that they don't, maybe never did respond to the responsibility of discipleship. They maybe they never did, and what they need is an encouragement. So again, not to shame or anything like that. If somebody is there in your presence, if you are even a participant, and somebody is there in your presence, you are representing the guild to that person. Doesn't matter what. Of course, as a participant, you may not be representing it the best, but you can still convey instructions and information, and you can share your own experiences and talk about why do you feel it's important to disciple and to dig deeper into life and into yourself and figure out what it's all about. So you as a participant even can inspire and can encourage a guest. And so the guest is somebody who's encountering the guild, but they have no commitment yet. All they are doing is building awareness. And this comes back to, I think, what I'm sure I talked about this already. So they're building awareness. They are not yet working. They aren't working on their skill of accountability in this range. That comes when a commitment is made, a commitment to follow Christ and to be a part of His church, and to study Scripture and practice it out and see what happens when you practice. So this is what participation is. And in there, we build our skill of accountability, which drives us towards discipline. And so, as I mentioned before, the discipline is a membership level. It's where you're able to stop screwing up, because you start to see the more inner workings of how the systems of how things work together. Okay, and that's usually a sort of paradigm shift. You take your assemblage of experiences that you gain through participation, and suddenly they get rearranged and whipped around, and you have a shiny new image of what it is you've been doing all this time, and everything changes. Again, this can be applied and shown to be true to any area of behavior in which we commit to learning. Another sort of hook here into a whole other set of discussions and I guess systems and research or whatever. Just talking about what the church can do. Another major one to address the breach of constraints, to address the brokenness of the world, however you want to say it, even the brokenness of the church. What can we do about this? I want to discuss more about the fact of trauma through our lives, and how trauma works to protect us. The reaction to trauma. So our body kind of shuts down and avoids certain things, and we become closed off. This is what trauma does to us, and it's impacting the APS. So in other words, we are learning to avoid certain triggers. Whatever was present when the body just was overwhelmed with that insane feelings of whatever it is, alienation or other pain, humiliation, whatever was present in our reality when that happened suddenly gets associated with bad times and bad feelings. And so we hold on to these accumulations of bad feelings, and slowly but surely our world, so our APS is getting crusted up and boarded up, so that we are actively avoiding certain areas of behavior, certain interactions. We're avoiding, and we're not doing it. And so these accumulate and collect together, and we end up being very limited. And this comes back to depression. What I believe this to be a major factor in depression. All these accumulation of traumas, and the bandages applied to the APS, which literally limit our reality and our idea of what's real and what's possible. So if it's not obvious already, I'll just reiterate that this work that I'm discussing, that I'm working on, Portal Mountain, all of this stuff is like an inward journey of finding that freedom, finding the meaning in life, and finding out just how constrained and contained of a life and of a reality that we were living. And we absolutely need to make this confrontation of our traumas, of our past. We need to confront it. We need to bring it front and center, and we need to engage in therapeutic behaviors to start to uncrust and unleash our sense of what's real. And this is what allows the Spirit to move and to work, and the Spirit will continue to break this, to break the ice, to break that crust. But it can be an incredible challenge. And when we are in a community type setting, in a church type setting or whatever, these traumas that we're holding on to are holding us back. We don't want to experience the communication with other people because of how we've been hurt in the past. But meanwhile, this communication is essential. We will never be able to experience the fullness of God unless we can repair the damage that was caused to our reality by trauma of being bullied at school, or just being this constant never-ending alienation, that this way that people relate to us and to each other in this form of a machine, simply heuristics and law-based approach to communication and interaction. It's exhausting. It sucks. It sucks to feel that way, that people don't know you, don't love you, and that any love you felt is severely tainted by condition. So in other words, most of the love that we've experienced is conditional love. If you didn't give something back to that other person, or if you withheld, or if you misbehaved, or if whatever, you'll be cut off. Anyways, my wife's here. So that's what I want to get into: trauma, the problem of trauma, and how it closes us off into a depression. And this is why we need ways to deal with that trauma, to break up the trauma, to come back to our pure potentiality. And this is what the Spirit needs to work with. It needs for our body to stop fighting, and for this feeling of possibility to be open. So anyways, we'll get into trauma later. As for now, I am gonna pack up and get out of here.